What if the coldest place on earth was also the safest place a child could belong? The wind does not ask permission. It moves across the frozen plain, as it always has, patient, relentless, indifferent to time. For tens of thousands of years, it has stripped the land bare, smoothing the snow, erasing footprints almost as soon as they are made. Nothing lingers here for long, nothing leaves a mark without effort. In this place, survival is not dramatic. There are no heroic moments, no sudden triumphs. Survival is quiet. It is measured in breath, in warmth, in decisions made early enough to matter. And yet, against everything this landscape seems to deny, children lived here. Not legends, not symbols shaped by later imagination. Real children, small hands stiff with cold, learning to hold tools before toys, eyes trained to read snowdrifts, shadows, and silence long before they learned to read faces. They learned when the land was safe, when it was changing, and when it was time to stop moving and wait. We often ask how adults survived the Ice Age. We measure their success in weapons, shelters, migrations, and bones left behind. But we rarely ask how childhood survived it, how learning continued when mistakes carried consequences, how care was given when resources were scarce, how the future was protected in a world that offered no guarantees. Today, we follow one family, not heroes, not chiefs, not leaders whose names would endure, just a household on the Arctic plain, beginning a single ordinary day, one that would never be written down, never remembered, yet quietly shaping everything that would come after. And somewhere within this unrecorded day lies an answer historians have long overlooked. Morning does not begin with light. In this part of the world, light arrives late. If it arrives at all, morning begins with sound. The soft, deliberate crack of ice shifting beneath the weight of the shelter. The faint, steady breath of animals kept close for warmth, their bodies sharing heat with human life. The quiet movement of a child turning beneath layered hides, unaware that the world outside remains completely dark. This dwelling sits low against the land, shaped more by wind than by intention. It is built from what the Arctic allows: bones, turf, packed ice, stretched hides, arranged not for comfort, but for survival. The walls are not solid barriers. They breathe, just enough to hold warmth without trapping danger inside. Fire here is never taken for granted. It is not a symbol, it is a responsibility. Heat is shared, rationed, and protected as carefully as food. A mother wakes first, not because she chooses to, but because generations before her learned the cost of waking too late. She leans toward the hearth, reading the embers by color and smell. She feeds the fire slowly, deliberately. Too much flame fills the shelter with smoke that has nowhere to escape. Too little, and fingers will stiffen before the day truly begins. Beside her, a child watches in silence. There is no instruction given, no explanation offered. Learning here is not spoken, it is absorbed. There is no schooling in this place. Only repetition, only memory passed through action. And this is how knowledge survives the cold. In this world, there is no separate word for childhood. There is no stage of life set apart from responsibility, no protected season where learning is delayed. Children are not sheltered from life here. They are folded into it, quietly and completely, from the moment they can stand. A young boy lifts a skin container filled with packed snow. It is heavy for his size, and no one tells him to drop it. This is not play. This is water, and water matters. Nearby, a girl sits cross-legged, sorting sinew by thickness, and feel alone. Her fingers already know what will hold and what will fail. No lesson is spoken. The knowledge moves through touch. No one praises these efforts. No one scolds them harshly, either. Learning here does not arrive in moments of instruction. It unfolds the way weather unfolds slowly, constantly, without ceremony. Each day repeats the last, not out of monotony, but because repetition is how memory survives. And yet, mistakes matter here in ways they do not elsewhere. A tool dropped into snow can be lost forever. A knot tied poorly can fail when it is needed most. A sky misread can turn a short task into a dangerous one. Each small error echoes larger in a place where margins are thin. Still, laughter exists. It appears suddenly, then fades just as quickly. It is quiet, brief, but unmistakably real. Because even on the Arctic plain, children are still children. By mid-morning, the family moves outside. There is no announcement, no clear beginning to the day's work, only a quiet shift from shelter to open space. The Arctic plain stretches in every direction, wide and seemingly empty to unfamiliar eyes. To them, it is anything but empty. It is crowded with information. Snowdrifts are not random shapes. They record the direction of the wind, the strength of recent storms, the time that has passed since the last snowfall. Subtle depressions mark where animals crossed hours earlier. Ice patterns speak quietly of what lies beneath thin water hidden under a surface that appears solid. Even the horizon is not just distance. It is a map, memorized long before it is fully understood. Landmarks are learned by shape, by shadow, by how they change under different light. Children absorb this knowledge gradually, without ever being told they are learning. An elder stops and points. There are no words. The gesture is held, patient and steady, long enough for young eyes to trace the line of meaning across the landscape. Nothing is explained. Nothing needs to be. This is how orientation is taught here. Not through directions, but through attention and patience. A child learns that the land is not hostile. It does not seek to harm, but neither does it protect. The land is honest. It never lies about what it can offer, or about what it will take in return. That understanding, learned early, lasts a lifetime. Hunting is not today's task. There are days when movement must be limited, when energy is conserved rather than spent. But preparation never stops. In the Arctic, survival depends less on what is taken than on what is preserved. Inside the shelter, dried meat is handled carefully, tested for brittleness with experienced fingers. Too dry, and it will shatter. Too soft, and it will spoil. Fat is rendered slowly, watched closely as it melts, its smell filling the confined space with a quiet promise of warmth and endurance. Nothing here is rushed. Children observe without comment. They see how every part is used, bone shaped into tools, sinew separated for binding, fat saved for fuel and nourishment. Waste is not a moral failing here. It is a risk. Time itself is treated as carefully as food. A meal in this place is not abundance. It is continuity. Each bite carries memory. Of last winter, when stores ran low. Of storms that kept families sealed inside for days. Of hands that once prepared this same food and are now absent, remembered only through habit and technique. When a child eats, they are not only fed, they are reminded without words that survival is not individual, it is shared. Warmth, effort, and nourishment move through the group together. No one eats alone in the Arctic. Outside once more, children move with a freedom that seems surprising in such a severe landscape. They are not closely directed, yet they are never truly alone. Their movements stay within invisible boundaries, learned through experience rather than instruction. They run in short bursts, always returning, always within sight. They imitate the adults around them, handling smaller versions of real tools, rounded, blunted, safe enough for young hands, yet made from the same materials and shaped by the same principles. Nothing here is symbolic. Even play carries weight. In this world, play is not separate from preparation. It is rehearsal. A pretend hunt unfolds across the snow, footsteps carefully placed, eyes scanning for signs that only imagination has left behind. A small shelter takes shape from loose snow blocks, uneven and fragile, collapsing often enough to teach balance and patience. A game of movement on uneven ice becomes a lesson in footing, awareness, and restraint. Each motion strengthens muscles that will one day carry real loads. Each mistake is corrected not by scolding, but by the environment itself. Slippery ground, cold air, and fragile structures provide immediate, honest feedback. The cold defines the boundary more clearly than any rule. And yet, joy finds a way through. It appears briefly, in shared glances and quiet laughter, before fading back into focus and caution. Because even in the Ice Age, imagination finds space to breathe. There are things children are never directly told, not because they are hidden, but because fear is heavy, and unnecessary fear wastes energy. In a place where survival depends on attention and restraint, panic has no use. Here, danger is not explained. It is observed. Children learn by proximity. They notice the scars that cross adult hands and arms. They register fingers that are missing, movements that have adapted around old injuries. No one points these things out. The lessons arrive quietly, carried by repetition and memory. They watch adults when the wind shifts. They see how conversation slows, how bodies angle slightly toward shelter, how hands pause in mid-task. These moments are brief, but unmistakable. A sudden stillness moves through the group. The sky has changed. No one announces it. No signal is given. Yet behavior adjusts almost instantly. Tasks shorten. Movements become more deliberate. Eyes lift more often, scanning the horizon. A child senses the change before fully understanding it, feeling the tension move through the adults like a current. This is how awareness is inherited, not through warning, but through shared attention. Caution passes silently from one generation to the next, embedded in posture, timing, and restraint. And in a world where danger is constant but rarely visible, this quiet transfer of understanding may be the most valuable gift of all. By afternoon, the temperature drops further, almost without warning. The light thins, the wind sharpens, the family responds instinctively, retreating inward as the world outside begins to close in. Gaps are sealed, hides are tightened and weighed down. A child presses packed snow against the outer wall, smoothing it carefully with gloved hands, learning how insulation is shaped by patience rather than force. Inside, the shelter grows quieter, not empty but contained. There are no stories told aloud, no spoken accounts of ancestors or distant events, yet stories are everywhere. They live in the gestures repeated without thought, in the rhythm of work passed from one generation to the next. They live in the tools themselves, objects shaped long ago, repaired many times, handled with care that borders on reverence. An elder lifts a familiar implement, fingers tracing its worn edges. A young girl watches closely. Later, she runs her hand across a shallow scratch, etched into a bone tool. She does not know when it was made, or by whom. She does not know what moment gave it meaning, but she understands that it matters, and that understanding is enough. History here is not narrated. It is not explained or preserved in words. It is touched, handled, and carried forward through use. And perhaps that is why it survives, because memory, when held in the hands, is harder for time to erase. As darkness settles early and complete time begins to stretch, in the Arctic, night does not arrive gently. It closes in, steady and absolute, reshaping the rhythm of the hours that follow. Inside the shelter, movement slows. There is mending, done by feel as much as by sight. There is quiet chewing, each bite measured, unhurried. There is rest without sleep, a state of watchful stillness where bodies recover but remain ready. Children speak little. They listen. They observe how adults endure the long spaces between action. They learn that much of survival is waiting for storms to pass, for hunger to ease, for loss to become bearable. No one explains this endurance. It is shown. Patience here is not taught directly. It is absorbed through repetition. A mother adjusts a child's covering, tucking the edges with practiced care to trap warmth. An elder exhales slowly, conserving heat with each breath. These gestures are small, almost invisible, yet they carry weight. These moments leave no artifacts behind, no tools, no marks in the ground, and yet they shape the future as surely as any blade or shelter, because endurance, once learned, is carried forward in ways history rarely records. When sleep finally comes, it does not arrive all at once. It settles in layers. Bodies draw closer together, arranged carefully to share warmth. Breath mingles in the confined space, rising and falling in a slow, collective rhythm. Heat is gathered and protected like a fragile resource, one that must last through the long hours ahead. A child drifts toward sleep, listening to the wind strike the shelter walls, feeling each impact through the ground and frame. Even in dreams, a lesson takes shape that safety here does not mean the absence of danger. It means closeness. It means being held within the circle of others when the world outside offers no shelter. Beyond the walls, the Arctic remains vast and indifferent. Wind moves freely across the frozen plain, unconcerned with human presence. Darkness stretches uninterrupted, swallowing sound and distance alike. Inside, life continues. Small movements persist, an arm shifts, a breath deepens, a covering is adjusted without waking the one beneath it. These quiet signs of care hold the shelter together as much as bone or hide ever could. And somewhere beyond this single dwelling, countless others like it flicker across the frozen world. Small points of warmth scattered across the ice, each one a quiet defiance against extinction, sustained through nothing more than shared breath, patience, and the will to endure. No names remain from this family, no faces preserved in stone or pigment, no voices recorded, no stories written down to mark their existence. Time has taken all of that, as it does in places where survival leaves little behind. But something endured. What survived was not an individual, but a capacity, the ability to raise children in places that offered no comfort, no certainty, and no promise of safety. The understanding that survival is not instinct alone, it is learned, practiced, and passed forward, often before it can be spoken. In this world, knowledge had to arrive early. There was no margin for delay. Children learned not just how to live, but how to wait, how to endure, and how to carry responsibility long before adulthood would name it. From this quiet resilience came movement. From these families came migrations that would one day cross frozen bridges, coastlines, and continents, not through conquest, but through patience and continuity. Every modern human carries traces of this inheritance, not as memory and not as story, but as instinct, embedded in how we seek warmth, how we protect the young, how we gather together when conditions turn uncertain. We come from people who raised children in the cold, and in doing so, believed that the future was still worth preparing for. The day ends without ceremony. There is no final gesture to mark its passing, no moment of triumph, no moment of tragedy. The light fades, the cold settles, and life continues in its quiet, unbroken line. And perhaps that is the answer hidden within this frozen childhood. Civilization did not begin with cities, monuments, or written words. It began with families who chose, day after day, to teach what could not be written, to protect what could not protect itself, and to endure even when the world offered no guarantees in return. In places like this, survival was never loud. It did not announce itself through conquest or invention. It persisted through repetition, through care, through the steady decision to prepare the next generation for a world that might be harsher still. If you walk away from this story with one thought, let it be this: human history was not carried forward by strength alone, but by the quiet determination to raise children even at the edge of the world. The people of this frozen plain left no names behind, but their choices remain, embedded in who we are and how we endure. In the shadows of prehistory, their lives still echo, and sometimes listening is enough. This has been a story from Prehistoric Shadows, where the past does not shout, but waits to be heard.